Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Syama Bunten. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of, together, and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. I am here today with the gorgeous Sel Watts. Sel, most people know you as being a serial entrepreneur, most recently as the founder and CEO of What's Next PX, but really as being just an overall incredible human being. I'm so grateful to have you here today on Getting Rich Together. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. What a way to start. I feel like I want to tear up.
Well, Sel, anyone who's known you for any length of time will know that you are an incredible business owner and entrepreneur. But as we both know, our show really focuses and centers on your entire life and all that you are. And so with that, I'd love to start off with a young Sel, maybe someone who's about 7, 9, 10 years old. Darling, where were you in this beautiful world? What was life like for you? And what was money like for you as a little girl?
Yeah, I'm Australian, you can probably tell. At that stage in my life, I was living in Australia. That was not a great time, 7, 8, 9. There was instability and insecurity in my life. There was domestic violence in my life. My mum had left my dad, and then everything was very unstable and unsafe. I think about that time a lot because obviously those moments have massive impact on your different behaviours. I remember certain things really clearly. In relation to money back then, I didn't have any sense of money at that point. A little bit later, like as I was going through my teenage years, it was quite interesting because I went to a private girls' school and I was the poorest out of everyone. My mum and I lived in a unit or a flat. We had the crappiest car and we rented this flat, and all my friends had huge houses with pools and tennis courts and Mercedes-Benz, like serious money. It's funny because I don't have a scarcity mindset around money. Considering how I was growing up, I was very aware and embarrassed. But I remember Mum always used to say, you get what you pay for. That's what I remember her saying all the time. You get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. So I sort of always had this view about quality and that you use money to get the things that you want. When I think about how we were living, whilst I didn't feel like I was going without anything, I was very aware that all my friends lived a certain life and I lived a very different life, and I had some embarrassment around that.
And so while you were in high school, usually the first opportunities that most of us get to get a job, have our own money, have some ownership over the decisions in our lives to some extent. Did you find yourself gravitating towards working and trying to make some extra income? Were you heads down in your studies in high school? What was that experience like as you were starting to come into your own?
Yeah, so I wasn't head down in my studies. I wanted to be an actress, and so I put all of my effort into my drama classes, and everything else got no attention whatsoever. I wasn't naturally disciplined, and I didn't have a home life. I needed guidance and support and accountability to what I needed to do. So I was naughty, not terrible by any means, but I was nowhere near living up to my potential. It's interesting now because I never felt like I didn't have access to money, but once I got a little bit older, my mum used to kick me out of home. So we'd have a fight, we had a terrible relationship. She'd kick me out, and that was such a key part of me becoming an entrepreneur. I didn't start my business until I was 30. It was very much driven by, if you can't even rely on your parents to support you, you'll never be able to rely on anyone. I have to look after myself. I can never trust that anyone else will be there. Sounds really negative. At the time, and as you know, it drove me in a positive place of being an entrepreneur and being independent. It was coming from a negative place, but I was using it for good. It wasn't until I was quite a lot older, like in the last 6 years, 5 years, I was like, oh, I'm like got a nice little moat around me and don't let anyone in. And perhaps I don't need to be like that anymore. I can actually just chill in that area. I'm 50 next year. So the last 5 years has been like, oh, okay, that really served me and helped me throughout my life. And now it's run out. It's like, that's no longer something I need. I have to work on that narrative.
But it certainly drove you to some powerful places, right? I feel like we can never be unscathed when it comes to life lessons we need to become the people that we are meant to be. So as you're progressing from high school to university and deciding what you were going to evolve into, how did you reconcile the desire to be an actress and wanting to experience yourself in that way, and then sort of choosing to go to college and start to apply yourself and think about things more, let's say, succinctly?
Yeah, so my eldest son is about to go off to college, and the college situation here in the US compared to Australia is completely different. You go to university, you stay at home, you don't go away, you'd go to the local university and, whatever. I went to university 3 times and dropped out 3 times very quickly. I never felt that I could learn that way. I was trying so hard to do what everyone else was doing. When I didn't get into acting, and that was purely because I hadn't been disciplined in my other areas that I needed, I didn't know where I fit. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. We'd never been taught anything about. We didn't have economics classes, business classes. Everyone, our school counselors would be pushing everyone at law or medicine because, that was good stats for the school. We didn't know what I wanted to do. I went backpacking around Southeast Asia and had no real direction. I didn't get started until I was 30, and then, started a business with no experience, no qualifications, no money, nothing. But I was driven by I want to see if I can, and I don't want anyone to be able to control me and tell me what I can and can't do and what I can and can't spend and whatever it may be. So, and it's funny because when I was like in the first few years of the business, I didn't tell anyone about my sort of story. And then when it got to 5 years and I'd got a few runs on the board, and then I could start saying, well, actually, you don't have to follow the path that everyone says. Like don't have any credentials, and I really didn't go to uni, and I didn't have whatever, and I still managed to build something out of nothing with nothing.
So obviously, there's a good 10-year period where you're like, okay, you're being handed a set of life experiences that are unique, possibly unusual, and certainly have guided you now into this next 20-year plus career you're entering into as a very independent, self-sufficient mother who's really on a trajectory. But those 10 years were also very influential. So, what were some of the more influential experiences that you had, and how did you sort of navigate the amorphousness of that time, right? And also what the key learnings were about yourself?
The things I had when I started the business were a really clear vision and a whole lot of naivety and no understanding of how little I actually had. But throughout those 10 years, I did a lot of backpacking and travel. I'd worked in dynamic industries like recruitment and ones where your personality and how you connect with people gets you a long way. So I was sort of on a normal career trajectory in the sort of recruitment HR space. I went and started working for a young recruiter, and she was very dynamic. And what came to light from my time with her was I could not see my potential. I was just so messed up. I couldn't see what I was capable of at all. I actually resigned. I said to her, I just can't, I'm just no good at this. She was like, but let's look at all your KPIs and your stats. Like, it's on paper, right? It's right here. There's evidence here. You are good at it. I'm like, no, I'm just not any good at it. And she was just like, this is so frustrating. I'm sure we all have met people where they just don't get how good they are or how awesome they are at something or whatever. She said, you know what? Okay, you need to, if you feel like you need to go and downgrade, because I was going to go and downgrade into an internal role, which just so not me. She said, that's fine, but I'm going to pay for you to do one session with my life coach. And so this is like, I was 27. So 20 years ago. And back then, life coaching was very not heard of. You wouldn't ever say to anyone that you were seeing a life coach, because everyone would be like, what is that? That's ridiculous. I spent an hour with this guy over the phone. He was in Melbourne. I was in Adelaide. And I spent an hour, and then afterwards I remember going downstairs onto the road, calling my husband saying, I need to do this 12-week coaching program with this guy called Ross, and it's going to cost $1 squillion that we can't afford, and I have no idea really what it's about, but I have to do this. We have to work out how to get the money. And so from that, I started this one-on-one life coaching with him, and I was the worst client because I pushed back on everything. I found it really confronting. I wouldn't do my homework. I kept pushing sessions, like rescheduling. Like I was a real pain. It's interesting that he didn't go, you know what, you're not committed, which would have been totally fair. But we pushed through, and I did the 12 weeks over, I don't know how long it took me, maybe a year. Then I did another 12-session program. I started to really open up about understanding my potential and working on those insecurities and those stories that we tell ourselves that make us smaller. Suddenly I was like, whoa, I actually can do anything. And it was this incredible transformation with a lot of hard work. I was putting a lot of time and money into personal development with Ross, any book he told me to read, any course he told me to go to, everything. So I became this personal development junkie. I remember ringing him. He'd changed my life, and I had not seen him in person. It had all been over the phone. There wasn't any Zoom back then. I remember at one point I called him. I said, I wish I'd never met you. And he was like, what's happened? And I said, I don't fit anywhere. Like I can't be around the people that I used to be around with, because now all I see is this limited belief and this victim mentalities and this negativity that everyone has. It just all became so obvious that I felt like I couldn't be where I used to be in the same groups I used to be in, because I could see something now. And I said, I just want to go back to how I was, where I just didn't know all that stuff. I just remember that call. I was really struggling with the fact that I felt like I didn't like anyone and I couldn't relate to anyone. And that's why things like EO have been so important, because you're around like-minded people who are focused on their personal development and who are putting the mirror up every day and going, you know, what am I doing that's not serving me? That was the game changer of my life. I remember saying to him, I'd love to have a job where you change people's lives, like what you've done to me. You changed my life. Like, that must feel amazing. He said, well, you could do that. And I said, I can't do that. He goes, I could teach you to be a coach. I was very passionate about young women not seeing their potential, like people like me, mid to high 20s, that had the world at their feet and just couldn't see it. So I was very passionate and getting very frustrated with the fact that there were so many of us like that. And he said, I'll train you. And so he did. And then I got some clients. And so What's Next was started as a life coaching business. That's really what was the change for me.
That's so incredible, Sel. And so were you able to then see, like, obviously you went through this transformation, you saw yourself differently in terms of, you know, if you can give an example, like, especially when it comes to money, I feel like sometimes, you know, we hold ourselves to limiting beliefs around what can I earn, or what can I ask for, or what do I deserve? And it sounds like you might have some interesting stories around how you went from, I'm going to take this downgraded position here. Give us some more context into how this transformation affected the way in which you saw your financial world.
I started coaching with him, took this internal downgraded role, and I got a role that I wanted in a law firm. I was there for a couple of months. I went to the CEO and I said, I want a 20 grand increase. It must have been 3 months, because I could show what I'd done. I said, I want a 20 grand increase, and this is why. This is what I've done. This is what I can tell you is the reason that things aren't working, and just put a completely different perspective. And actually being in that recruitment world of that very dynamic commercial industry, but also learning about business and personal development, I was just looking at everything at a completely different perspective. When I came in, she said, okay, I've written a blog about it. I wrote a blog about it.
Oh my God. How did that feel?
You know, it was like, I am worth this because I've come in here, I haven't known anything, and I've done all of this stuff. I've realized that, wow, I'm really valuable to this company in this role, and I've really made a difference already. And so I'm going to ask, it wasn't sort of, well, should I, this is pushing the boundaries, I was like, this is how I felt.
Well, you owned it. You were like, I want more money. This is how much I want. This is why I want it. I think that's incredible. At what point from the stability of someone else paying you to then moving into what I consider to be the most embodied version of self, when you say, you know what, I can trust myself to provide for myself. I can navigate what this world looks like outside of this maybe false construct of a corporate job. At what point did you decide you were going to have this business full time? And how did you and your husband think about structuring home life? And obviously, life is different when you have corporate jobs, and then you start to move into entrepreneurialism, which certainly can have high returns, but can be challenging to start to see the flywheel. So what was that conversation like at home, and how did you make that decision?
So I started doing this life coaching on the side, and we had an opportunity to move state. We moved to Brisbane, and I said to Ben, I'd really like to not get a job and try and get this business happening. He's like, okay. And so I was doing that, and then I feel like I need to do something. I fell pregnant with my first child, which we planned. I really would like to get a job so that I can put some money aside. So I applied for all these jobs, pregnant, and wrote in the cover letter, I am 6 months pregnant, or whatever it was, 3 months pregnant, to see whether anyone would actually invite me in for an interview. This position that I ended up doing was the catalyst for me starting my business. So I got this role as in a company of about 100 people, and they had a payroll person, but it was the first time they'd had a HR role. And so I applied, I'd written in my cover letter that I was pregnant, I came in, did the interview, they gave me the job, and then I said to them, also, I'd like to work 4 days because I want to do my coaching on the side. And they said, okay, that's fine. And then it's like, I'm only going to be there for however many months until the baby comes. And then I said, I'm in a HR role. I can't be open plan. I need an office. So they built an office. Like, now I think about it, now we're talking about like how these things happen. I just was like, I'm just going to ask. I've always thought, go out with exactly what you want and then negotiate from there. Go for what you want and then see what you're willing to sacrifice or whatever. I did that role, and I had this amazing owner. When I went on maternity leave, he left and this new woman came in, and I didn't want to go back. And I was like, I have saved enough money, 9 months worth of money before I have to go back to work. Put the money aside so that for 9 months I could pay my part of I was like, I need to get a business started in that time. So by the time the 9 months hits, I can support myself as far as our family, my contribution. The owner, he had other businesses, so he engaged me to do some recruitment for him or whatever. My son was 3 months old and I launched the business. It's going to be 18 in August, and I got the invoice. I charged $60 an hour to recruit a CEO.
Wow.
And it was like by the hour. The invoice is done in Excel, and it's like, $60 an hour. This is Australian too, by the way, for however many hours for CEO recruitment. I mean, crazy. But I was like, I've got 9 months until I run out of money. So like I had a 3-month-old baby sitting here. We'd moved from another state. So we had no network. I didn't have parents around us. Didn't have any money. We were okay. We were earning.
Was your husband like, okay, this sounds like a good plan? Was he fully on board?
He's always been very sort of like I don't have any aversion to risk, but he does. And I would always like, it's going to be fine. I've got this. He was very much always wanting me to do what I wanted to do. So I was very lucky in the fact that he I backed myself, always have, and he supported that and was like, okay, well, if this is what she wants, she'll make it happen. 7 years later, he left his job and joined the business. I remember sitting in this spare bedroom with the baby there, and I was like, I'm going to build a international consulting firm that's going to disrupt the HR space and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't have anything in my toolkit except for this vision and this naivety. Like I didn't realize I didn't have anything. It wasn't until 5 years later when I started getting asked to do talks about the story. I remember the first time that I sat down to prepare for a talk, and I was, wow, I really had nothing going for me. Oh my gosh, this is really quite incredible, this story. And I didn't really realize until I had to sort of think about the journey and look back and go, whoa, I had no idea. But I had this vision, and I was like, I'm going to, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to disrupt it. When I look at the whole journey, left and moved to New York City when I was 45 with 3 kids and a business, and just left to start all over again. And there are so many times where I look at my life now where I've been in situations I have truly lived and thought, not consciously knowing at the time, but that saying, like, a bird is never afraid of the branch breaking because it knows it has its wings. I look back now, I realize that that's how I have been. I've always backed myself. It's like, well, if everything disappears, because I never had anything, and I've always been, well, I never had anything anyway, and I never got given anything. No one gave me any money. I didn't borrow any money for the business. Everything I just built myself slowly and just with hard work. And so because of that, and because I didn't have this stable family or, parents I could fall back on, I just always was like, well, I have to make it happen. And whilst I had my husband, I never thought about it that way. I just always backed myself. Now, when I walked away from everything that I had built to start all over in the most expensive city in the world, on paper, none of that makes sense. But it's like my heart just needs me to do that. So I'll just do it. Somehow I'll work it out.
You mentioned your husband quit his job and joined you 7 years into the business. Now, 2 questions. One is obviously building a business. Some people, I think, really over glamorize building a business, but really it can be tough to pay yourself, right? Sometimes there are trade-offs between what do I take for myself? What do I put back into the business? At what point did you feel secure to start drawing a salary that you felt really good about? And how did you think about the next levels of saying, okay, well, now I can put money into some savings again, right? Or start to replenish what you're drawing down on to start the business. How did you think about managing these early days of the cash flow? And then how did you decide to bring your husband on board? And what the hell was that experience like? But let's start with the first one. At what point were you able to start to draw a meaningful salary?
Yeah, so I remember it was getting close to 5 years in, and I just put everything back in the business. I worked all the time. I had 2 kids at that stage, and we lived in this house that we had a mortgage on, but it was this little house. It was nowhere near okay for 2 little kids. Everything was hard. I didn't have a cleaner. Everything was going back into the business. I invested very early in staff. The business wasn't built on my billable time, if for want of a word, we never build for time, but if you know what I mean. I went into it because I wanted to grow something. I remember, oh my God, poor Ben. I remember him coming home one day when I was in that little spare bedroom, and there's the spare bed behind me, and the business is, I don't know, like tiny weeny. And he came home, and I can't visualize growth in this space. Like, how can I visualize growth and being an international company in this space? I need to go and get an office. And he was like, but you don't have any money. And I'm like, I found a place that I can pay by the month. And so as long as I can pay for that month, then I'm not locking myself into anything. And then I was like, and also it's really silly for me to be doing all this administration. I should have an employee so that I can focus on sales. This is like right at the beginning. And he's like, but you don't have any money. And I'm like, yeah, but the reason I don't have any money is because I can't do the sales. And if I had someone and I had an office where I could visualize growth, like, I mean, seriously, if I was in an office where I could visualize growth and I had an assistant or whatever, then I could make money. So I was like, okay, I'll get an office where it's pay by the month, so I'm not locked into anything, and I'll get a temp person. A girl, I met a girl at a conference and who was happy to do part-time hours and whatever. And so I said, okay, I'm not locked into anything, but I went for it. And he was just like, oh my God, you're doing all of this when you have nothing, like you haven't got anything. But I really believed that you need stuff to generate, like you really need. And so I was always like that with the business. I remember me and my assistant, I said, oh, can you do a phone list for us to put on the wall? Back in the day, you'd have a phone list. I said, can you do a phone list? And Ben and her boyfriend, her mom, our IT guy, and that's about it. She printed out this phone list for us to put on the wall. And it just looked a bit shabby and whatever. And I said to her, if we were a 100-person company and we had people all around Australia and you had to do the phone list, would you be happy with that? And she was like, no. And I was like, we have to act like we are 100-person. We have to act like where we want to be. She's like, okay. So she did this beautiful phone list with the logo and whatever, like 4 people on it. We stuck it up and I was like, yes. And then I was like, okay, I need to get proper branding, proper cards and whatever. Ben was always like, you're acting like you're this established company. And I was like, yeah, because I've got to act like where I want to be. I did that from the very beginning. But anyway, so I think that has been a mentality that has helped me. And I don't really know where that came from. But in relation to taking salary, so I remember 5 years in, I didn't have any help and I was just really pushing it hard. I got this business coach and he said to me, you need a bigger house, you need a better car, you've shown that you've got consistent income, you've got a team of 5 people, you actually need to do that because if you don't, you won't go any further. You can't keep living in an environment that makes everything harder. And so we bought a proper grown-up house and with a pool. I got a nanny and I'd always had this car that I'd wanted. And the day I started the business, I said, if the business lasts for 5 years, on the 5-year anniversary, I'm going to get myself this car. And I never, ever really believed that because I was not someone who had that type of car. But I had that picture. We moved offices 4 times because we kept growing. And I take my picture. And so this coach said, you need to get a proper house. You need to set yourself up so that you've got the right support and foundations around you because you've got a serious business now. It was $1 million business. And I was like, oh, can I do that? And it's funny because once I did that, it's like that, okay, now I'm ready for the next stage. I'm serious. And yeah, so I don't remember, I know that I never borrowed a cent and that when I would get paid an invoice, if a client paid me $1,000, I'd put 20% into another account for the tax payment. I was so aware that I don't have anyone to fall back on. And so I just made sure that I never had to worry about when tax time came or when whatever. I always had everything where it needed to be. When he said to me, you need to make this easier for you, like it's really getting out of control. That was a big change. And then it got to the 5 years and a couple of my staff at the time came in and said, so 5 years is coming up. You're going to get the car? You're going to get the car? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to get the car. Anyway, then that same day, one of those team members came back into my office late at night after everyone left and said, you have to get the car. I got goosebumps. I said, I don't know. She said, if you don't get the car, what hope have I ever got of getting that sort of car?
Wow.
And it's so funny, at the time I had clients that were like, I don't know what to do about where I park my car because my employees see that I've got a nice car and then they think they should be being paid more. And I'm like, oh, that's a culture thing. I didn't really realize that at the time. But when she said that to me, it just gave me a whole nother view of like, you know what? I got to do this for all those behind me as well. Like I've had nothing and no one helping me. And I've been able to build something, not astronomical, but I've been able to build something from nothing. And you know what? I should start sharing this and I should start showing people that you don't have to have all these things and you don't have to have come from the best family or have had the best childhood or got the best qualifications. Like you can just want to do something and then back yourself, basically. And yeah, so I got the car.
Oh, I love that. What a fantastic story, Sel. And so that must have been then 2 years before you hired your husband and brought him into the company. How did you guys decide to have not just your feet committed to the business, but to now have 4 feet, right? 2 heads of the household, providing for children, deciding to sort of be in business together?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really planned that way. I was like pregnant with my 3rd son, and he was quite senior in his job. So his job needed, the extra hours, whatever. And then my business is growing. We're about to have 3 kids. So I said it would be so much easier on the family and the business if you didn't work there. We could just balance everything better. You help with the kids more, and then you can help me with some projects, like things that I really want to get done in the business, but I just can never get to. We had we're very different sort of, like, he's really good at operations and I'm visionary. So he wound down his time at where he was working. He started doing consulting back for 3 days a week. I ended up taking time off with my 3rd son, which I hadn't done with the other 2. I started the business at that time, the same time. And the goal was that he would come in. I created an employment contract, and it said in it, you have to play golf every Wednesday. He never did that. And it's really about, you can get some projects that are going to make the business so much better. We don't have to worry so much about one of the kids is sick, all that stuff. It was a disaster. I would do so many things differently now. But a lot of the times when a spouse comes into a business, often it's the stay-at-home mum who comes in, does some part-time hours doing bookkeeping or whatever. When you've got a man who is got his own career, has been very successful in his own right, and then you say, come into this small business that is awesome but is small, and just do stuff. Like, you don't have a big team that you're leading. You're not in the leadership team anymore. We didn't realize the impact that would have and how challenging that was for him to adapt. He tried to be me. And it was a disaster. It was a key part to our marriage breaking down. But just to jump to the happy ending, he runs my company in Australia now so that I could come and chase my dream in New York. So, crazy story. But yeah, so that was very, it was just stuff we just couldn't have known.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not easy to be in business with a spouse, and then certainly, you're also learning so many different things about each other in a different context, right? It's like there's
never, we were in business. My business, always been, and still to this day. My business, I'm the entrepreneur, I started it, and he came to work in it. So it was never about us being in business together. And that I have had many issues over the years because everyone assumes it's his business, and he started it, or we must have started it together. And that has happened ever since he came in. Everyone has assumed it's his business or we started together. And so he makes it very clear to everyone, Sel started this. I didn't come in until it was 7 years old, until it was established and could look after our family. So, and even to this day, like, he's the CEO of Australia office. He's brilliant and has done an amazing job. And he says, Sel started this. I mean, it was Sel's brainchild or whatever. So, but because I would just get so frustrated with hearing.
Well, yeah, how awful, right? I mean,
what happens today? Like, oh, you guys, and also because the business has my surname, which is my married name, it frustrates me so much that people make the assumption that he started it or that we obviously started together. There's no understanding that I did this completely and made it successful enough for him to be able to leave his high-powered job. Yeah.
Wild. I mean, and it's, I wish there were more stories of the opposite, but there are far more that affirm your experience around what that narrative is. So fast forwarding, you've owned this business now for over 17 years. You now have a location and you're building business in New York City. You just moved to New York City about 5 years ago. Talk to me a little bit about the trajectory of this business. So what was the impetus, or how did you think about savings and security to then start to be able to say, okay, this next big dream of mine is something that I feel like I can go after? Did you have I've hit a certain amount of money in my savings account, I'm now invested in these areas? What were some of the things that you did, and where did you park your money for some security or stability as you decided to make these next big decisions?
So you're going to be absolutely horrified by what I say. Horrified.
Go for it.
Applause. Do not follow this advice. Do not do what she did at home. Ben came into the business. In 2016, I nearly lost the business. I had employed someone that caused a lot of trouble and they tried to sue me. I lost a lot of staff. It was just a disaster. But that really knocked me, and I was really unhappy, just generally. I was unhappy in my marriage. I was unhappy in life. And so I kept running away to New York. So I'd come to New York for 3 weeks, stay in an Airbnb, and people would say, what are you doing there? You're doing business? It's like, no, I don't know. I just need to be here. So I was running away. There was no planning or savings or business plan. There was nothing. I was just running to New York to get away. The problem is you can't get away from yourself, which is really what I was trying to do. I just kept doing that. And the business was at a point where it was a really great lifestyle business, putting off good cash. We had a really nice house. We had all the fancy things and blah, blah, blah. We could do great trips and whatever. And I was not responsible. I was really burnt out, really, really burnt out. All these things I didn't recognize at the time, right? I'm running away. I'm unhappy. I'm burnt out. All of these things I didn't know that was happening. If I knew that, then I would behave differently, maybe. But I didn't. I just spent 18 months here living on different couches and going back every month to see the boys, trying to work out how I could move here. There was no plan, no preparation, no money preparation, nothing. And the business just funded me to chase this thing. And I just kept chasing and kept chasing. And then it was the middle of 2019. I had been doing this for a year and I was really not making much progress because it's really hard to move to America as an entrepreneur and start up here. It's really hard. I went back over the summer, and I'm a big believer in coaches and mentors. I had this coach who coaches world champion surfers. And I believe there's a whole lot of alignment to coaching for sport and coaching for business. And so I got him and I was like, I'm trying to do this New York thing. It's not working. And I know that if I give up on this dream, that I will go into a depression and I'll recover. And he said, well, you just need to go back and try again. And I said, but I've been doing that for over a year, away from the kids, so much judgment. The things that people would say to me about my mothering, being a mother, was so cruel. And he said, you just got to go back and find another way. And I said, but I've been doing that. He said, find another way. And if that doesn't work, find another way. So I came back, had 6 months, and I was like, okay. I was the one walking down the streets in New York City crying, going, find another way, find another way. And then I got a few clients, and I got the boys to move over with the view that they'd come for a year and we'd just have an experience. They got here, and 6 weeks later, COVID happened and everything shut down. Ben, who had not been away apart from the kids, could not get into the country for 10 months. Australia would not let him leave. He applied to come and visit 11 times to see his kids. Denied, denied, denied. I said to him, why don't you put in that the purpose of the trip is for business? Put that in, and they approved it. So he could come.
No.
How bad's that? The boys have been here for 6 weeks. They got into school. Everything's completely different. It is so different to our world in Australia. COVID happens and Ben can't get here. The boys are at home in an apartment. We've been living in a big house and whatever. I'm not domestic at all. I can't cook. I don't know how to use a washing machine. I'm hopeless. Suddenly we're all together in this, not knowing anybody in the country, in the city. It was just wild. Yeah. So it was crazy. And so then people were saying, you need to come home. It's disgraceful what you're doing. It's cruel to Ben. It's irresponsible. It's not safe. I just got smashed. And I was like, I'd spent 2 years commuting, being away from my boys to try and make this dream happen. I can't go back. If I go back, we'll never get here again. And so I said, we just need to hang in there. I was also very Australian, but this is bullshit. This will be over in 2 weeks. oh, this will be over in 2 weeks. I did that for 18 months. Oh, this will be over soon. This will be over soon. And it was like, it's New York City. It's going to have an amazing comeback. Everyone's leaving and selling their properties and, all this stuff. And I'm like, no, it's going to be the most amazing comeback in a month. And then 2 years later or whatever, the kids.
Oh my God. So how has it been now that you've been in New York for 5 years? You've established a New York City-based business. You are thriving. How did you get to where we are today? What was the linchpin? What happened?
So, I'm not thriving. I'm not there yet. COVID put a huge, it stopped everything in my business. Luckily for Australia, that was an established business. And so it could get through, it's got through a number of different economic crises and we could get through, and that's business supported me to be here on the disgusting exchange rate, which makes me want to vomit in my mouth. But, everything stopped and I had to rebuild. I went through a real personal crisis. I'd been away from the boys. I got the boys here. Then I was getting the business going and then COVID happened and I just didn't have any traction here. But I wasn't going to give up. I had so much criticism, people being so mean to me. But I was like, I'm just not going to. We'd have family meetings. Is everyone cool to keep going? Everyone cool to keep going until this time? Yep. So we did a lot of that. But no, I'm not thriving. I'm still trying to get us to a place where I don't have to rely on my Australian business and I can be fully independent here in the US, which I can't. I need my Australian business and that means I need Ben working in. That puts a lot of pressure on him. But we're here. I've got clients and a network and connections, and my, son who was coming here and said, I'm only going to come for 6 months, is now about to go off to college and loves it. So I'll call you when I can say, I'm ready to talk about the thriving part. Probably another 5 years. Back when I first started, the beauty of naivety and the beauty of not having ever had anything. Like now I worked my way up to have lots of things, and it's very hard to I'm older now and I want to do the shit that I did when I was 30 and starting out. The boys are different and they need different things. And I'm now in a completely different city. What I realized was I kept trying to build this business like what I did when I started the first one. Why can't I do it the same way? Why am I not like I was? Really fought that for a long time until I went, I'm a lot older. I have a lot of different views of the world. There are certain things that I'm just not prepared to do. I've got my boys are, completely different stage. I can't look at this about what I used to do, what I did the first time. I have to start this whole thing from who I am now. And so all of this has been happening over the years. It's taken me years to work out all this stuff and why I've made stupid decisions or self-sabotaged or trying something and it's just not working because it worked the first time. The whole world's different. I didn't have social media when I first started my business. It's I can't try and build it the same way. I have more on the line than I did. This has been an incredible self-development journey and continues to be every single day. And I'm sure if we talk again in 6 months, there'll be a whole nother crazy ass stories to share.
Well, Sel, the thing that's really clear out of this conversation is you are deeply in touch with what you are wanting. And you are not afraid to really examine all that you are for all that you want to be and create. And I think that when it comes to letting go of who we are and stepping into our greatness, I think your story does a fantastic job of really sort of highlighting what does it look like when you fully commit to your dreams or yourself. It also begs the question, there are so many people, especially women, who never dare to dream of what is fully possible. And partially it's because it's fucking scary. There's this component, which is, can it happen? Yes, it's happening. What does it mean? If it means that you can go from a thought to a thing many, many times, it means that you're simply just not done living yet, which sort of begs me to my next question. We're all sort of living these days much longer than I think we should. Dare I say you'll be living to about 120 because that's just the way science is moving. But as you sort of think about your way of being in the world, that would almost put you at having 6 or 10 other locations you might live and starting other branches of the business. I mean, how do you sort of look at legacy or life going forward, given all that you've experienced so far?
Yeah. Well, I will say one thing about what you said before. My life mantra is no plan B, and I have it tattooed on my arm. And it's because I believe if everyone just went and did what they really wanted to do, and they didn't worry about what people thought, and they didn't worry about it might failing, we would be so much happier. And people would be surprised by what they're capable of and what you can make happen. If there's no plan B, you got to make it work. You've got to make it work. I live by that mantra every single day because I am so passionate about the fact that it upsets me that people aren't prepared to chase their dreams. I'm starting all over again as far as my legacy goes. I imagine that I'm 111. That's how long I'm going to live to, 111. And I'm sitting there with all my grandkids and great-grandkids in a rocking chair on a porch. This is what I visualize. And there's all these generations sitting in front of me. And they say, so Grandma Sel or whatever, so Sel, tell us about your life. And I say, well, have I got a story for you? And that is what my legacy is. And that's what I'm living. I can't tell you what it's going to be because I'm in it. That is the goal, to be able to go, well, gather round because I've got to with you. And I'm not even halfway through yet. So that's how I'm living.
I love it, the hero's journey. I have two final questions. They are two of my favorite questions. Often we talk about money in terms of struggle or not having enough or, what the sort of logistics or, the hard questions around money. But I also really love some of the fun things that money can do for us, right? Some of the ways in which it can put a smile on our face and contribute to special moments and opportunities. What are some of been your favorite ways to spend money recently? What's been making you happy or feel good when you've been exercising your capital?
Travel always, travel experiences always. Any chance I get to go on my own, I'll take the boys to have experiences in my own little world. I love fashion. I like wearing eclectic things. I really enjoy investing my money in buying nice clothes. So I don't buy Chanel clothes, but buying things that I really love and getting a lot of enjoyment out of that. I didn't spend anything for the first 5 years and then 7 years. I remember the first time I bought myself a pair of shoes that were $250 or it started going to a more expensive shop. Then you open the gates and it's like, whoa, how awesome is this? And it's funny because now I look at things like I went through the whole like buying the beautiful bags and all, and now I'm like sort of done that. I like it and I would do it, but it's not as big thing. Buying cool clothes and stuff I really enjoy. But otherwise, it's always about travel and experiences for all of us. The more you travel and experience other cultures and other people, you realize that your stuff doesn't matter. Like, it's all cool. Don't worry about it. It's ultimately this tiny speck and you get out into the world and you're like, God, why am I worrying about what my mother-in-law thinks?
And then my last question, Sel, is, the audience loves to support the guests who are on the show. So what is it that you're calling in right now? How can we support you?
Oh, thank you so much. I love that. I'm trying to build my business. We're culture architects for founders. We come in and go, what do you want to achieve in your business? Right. From a people perspective, we're going to work out how to get you there. And it's really cool work. It's interesting and it's about achieving the dream for the client, but it's also giving employees an amazing experience. I just really want to get into as many businesses as I can to show them that you can have a really cool people experience built from the goal of the founder. They're not separate. I want to connect with people who have their own businesses with staff, and I just want to build this business out now.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Sel, it's been incredible having you today on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.